today. Here's the whole garden right here. So starting over here on the left, we have sunflowers. It's mostly a black oil sunflower. Right behind me here are our potatoes, and they need hilling. We're gonna try to hill them up tomorrow, and then we'll probably mulch around them in the coming days. Next up here, we have 2 rows of half-runner beans, and they're doing really great. We're about to put up a trellis because they're about to start flopping over if we don't. You can see they're just ready to climb. Half-runner beans do need some trellising. You don't have to, but they tend to flop over. They don't grow to the full height of a pole bean, but they do grow several feet high. These next 2 rows are black-eyed peas. My friend actually grew these for Southern Exposure Seed Exchange a couple years ago, and I've had them in the freezer since then. They're quite a bit of work. You do have to shell them. The next row here is Grace's garden, and she has okra, 2 little tomatoes, beans, corn, and there's more tomatoes at the end, and she's taking care of this row on her own. The next 2 rows here are glass gem corn. It's a beautiful colored popcorn. It's not a great popcorn. It's mostly for show. It's a beautiful plant. Now, we can take those ears of corn and shell them and feed them to the animals or the chickens, but we'll probably, honestly, just let them dry and then use them for decoration and give them to friends because they're so, so beautiful. Underneath this row, there's watermelon. There's about 6 watermelon plants in here. And then under this row, acorn squash. These 5 rows of corn are Hickory King corn. And Hickory King is a field corn. It's really kind of a feed corn or a cornmeal corn. I planted this for a couple reasons. Number one, I've always wanted to grow Hickory King. It grows really, really tall. The other reason I wanted to grow it though is because I'm gonna grow pole green beans on it. I have the seeds soaking inside. I'm gonna plant them tomorrow, and those will actually grow those heavy, strong stalks of the Hickory King, and we'll have a bunch of green beans in this section as well. This is all butternut squash. The butternut squash will spread out and cover most of this area if it does well. And butternut squash is one of my very favorite things to grow. Honestly, I think it's the easiest thing to store through the winter. We're still eating butternut squash now in June from my parents' garden last year. We actually still have some in the house. I won't leave the chickens out of the garden tour because we've started to put hay in this area the chickens are in, and we're gonna keep putting more bales of hay in here. Between their work of kind of spreading the hay around and turning the hay and adding their nitrogen from their manure onto the ground, the chickens are getting this space ready for either some fall planting this year or, if nothing else, for next year's garden. Over here beside the chickens is a big compost pile. This is from our stalls where we cleaned out. This was our deep bedding for our goats. And this is still breaking down. We're gonna start bringing it out and putting it in the garden. It's not actually growing food, but it's a really important part of the garden. Here are 5 rows of sweet corn. This year I got peaches and cream, which is just a beautiful corn and a delicious corn. And if you've never had peaches and cream, it has golden and yellow kernels on the same ears. There's nothing better than fresh corn out of the garden, just lightly parboiled, eaten with butter and pepper and salt. And there's nothing better than frozen corn in recipes in the wintertime. Below the peaches and cream corn is a blank slate. We'll probably actually make 3 beds with some of the compost from the goat stalls. This is where we're gonna plant our winter garden. It's not a very big area, but we can put carrots in there, greens, kale, and we will fill this area up. And we'll be planting that within a month. Next down we have 2 more rows of beans. These are another row of the half-runner beans. And then this is a row of purple bush beans, so we won't have to trellis these up at all, and you can see the stalks are purple and the beans actually themselves are purple. The next row down has okra, and the okra plants are still small, but they're about to take off. And then at the end of that row there are pepper plants, a giant volunteer, I think that's a pumpkin, a bunch of cucumbers, which we're about to trellis. And then our tomatoes are next. I can't remember off the top of my head all of our tomato varieties. I know we've mentioned them in another video. We've got Cherokee Purple. We have 2 from, I think, North Carolina State that are bred for disease resistance. Orange Oxblood. Anyway, a bunch of tomatoes. We love tomatoes. Here's my comfrey plants, and then rhubarb. And we won't harvest anything off those this year. And then the last row down here is asparagus. The asparagus is looking good. We will harvest from this asparagus for many years to come. I'll show you right here, the chickens are kind of actually destructive in here. This is the area where there's tons of beetle grubs. And a lot of y'all said they were Japanese beetle grubs, and the chickens have been in here eating them, but they've also been just smashing the asparagus plants down. And that's just the work of like the 3 rogue chickens that always get out and roam around. I can't imagine if all the chickens were loose in the garden. My thinking actually is that the guineas might be less destructive and root less in the garden. We may try putting the guineas and or a few ducks in the garden and letting them go through and eat bugs. All right, so that was our little garden tour. I would love to hear from you all as to how your gardens are doing this year. Maybe a crop that you're just really excited about growing, or a crop that you've grown for years and it always does well for you. Please leave a comment on this video and just tell us something about your garden. This has been another great day in the homestead. We weren't here a lot today. We actually kind of left a rainy homestead and went into town with all the kids and did a real fun activity with them. But we're back out here this evening. Always glad to be home. And that's it. We'll see you tomorrow.